Circular breathing. This is something that sometimes feels like a magic trick or even like a sort of a circus act sometimes. But used in the right way, it can give us a lot of freedom. As wind players, we're oftentimes limited by the amount of air that we have. And sometimes having just that little extra push allows us to play a longer phrase without even having to worry about it. So if you're here already, you probably are on board with the idea of doing circular breathing. I don't need to convince you. So let's get back into how we do this. The idea is that for just a moment of time, we're going to use our cheeks as the thing that's creating the sound as opposed to our lungs. And during that moment is when we take a breath in through the nose, replenish the oxygen, and get going back again. So I'm going to take you through the steps on how you can start circular breathing yourself. The first part is actually not all that difficult for us. If you have ever been drinking some water, had a mouthful, and are breathing in through your nose, you're doing the breathing part of circular breathing. Let's all try this. So fill up your cheeks like you've got some water in there or something like that, and then breathe in and out through your nose. Hopefully no one's around to watch you. You get to see me do it. So that's the important step. We're separating out the cheeks from the lungs. Now, as you're doing that, you're going to let a little bit of air come out through your lips. I'm going to make a little bit of a sound so you can tell that the air is coming out. So we get the breath in. My air is going in and out the whole time, and my cheeks are pushing that little bit of air out. To show you how that works, got a cup of water. To prove that that the air is coming out, the bubbles in the water are going to show that happening. So, got my cheeks full. So that whole time I'm breathing in and out because the cheeks are doing all of that work. We start with a glass of water and a straw rather than with the instrument because we've got a whole bunch of practiced habits on that instrument that are hard to just do differently because this is conceptually a different way of doing everything. So the glass of water is really useful that way. We can use that to help us see exactly what this movement is. So go back if that's something that's feeling weird for you. And by the way, pause this and get a glass of water with about 1 to 2 inches in the bottom and a straw so that you can practice this along with me. We've got to just get those two parts separated out. So the first part might just be cheeks full, breathing in and out of the nose. Gradually, you're going to let some of that air push out from the cheeks. Really, circular breathing has that little bit of a misnomer part, like we're breathing out the whole time. We're pushing air out from our cheeks. Totally different mechanism from what we normally do. So you may want to just try that cheek part all by itself. Sometimes we tend to use some of that lung air at the same time, which is why I try to get these two things separated out to start with. But that's the thing that's going to make the sound when we do that. Same thing on the instrument. And so we're not really concerning ourselves with any great length of stuff. We're just getting that concept of making the motion happen first and getting that separation. So once you feel like you can make some of that separation, we can actually start doing a whole cycle with the glass of water. So we're going to start out with our cheeks full, and we're going to push that air out as we take in a breath through our nose. From there, you're able to just keep on breathing the regular lung air into here. Once you feel like you've expended that air, we're going to stop again and do that once more. So, start. We do that stop so we make a little transition in our mind between here's the lung air that I'm using, here's the cheek air. Eventually, that stop won't even need to happen, and we can do that cyclically in that whole circular method. If you get yourself doing a good set of bubbles that way, now it's time to start doing that on your instrument. This works really well with instruments that have a good amount of back pressure. If you're playing something like flute or tuba, it's a little bit harder. The more that you can push up against, the easier it is. So let's take our instrument. First, for clarinetists, and this works well if you're an oboist or bassoonist, take a small part of your instrument so that we're not thinking about fingerings and all the other habits we have here. Once you get that cheek full, you're just going to push that air out with your cheeks. And take in the breath with your nose at the same time. That's the essence of the circular breath. Now, if you're a little bit more used to circular breathing, you've been doing this for a little bit, you'll notice that there's sometimes a little bump that happens when we get back into the lung air after the cheek air. There's a little cessation of the sound there. That's because we use up all the cheek air and there's none to overlap. It's kind of like we've got two pieces of paper we want to glue together, but we haven't gotten them overlapped. So we need to start our lung air before the cheeks are all the way done. And you can see now that the sound is a little bit more even. Your results may not be the same as that. Don't worry about embouchure, don't worry about perfect tone, don't worry about anything other than the continuity of the air at the beginning part. So, if that's starting to feel comfortable for you, you can put your whole instrument together. Try it that way. Again, we can go through our different steps. Step 1, cheeks. And then blowing the air and filling it back up. Now make those pauses become smaller and smaller till they're not there. You may also notice as you're doing this that the breath in becomes a little bit intense. See if that breath in can be as smooth and relaxed as possible. Practicing that from the beginning is going to help us so that that doesn't become like a jarring motion as we do this later. Starting to get used to playing, we get distracted by the sound, so on woodwind instruments anyway, something that's really helpful to do is to play a trill so we're not as focused on just the single quality of that sound. And that can work just to concentrate on that fluid and smooth exchange between the two kinds of air. As you get more and more comfortable with that, you'll notice different instruments happen in different things, but for the clarinet, it's a little bit challenging as we get higher into the registers because of the different necessities of tongue position. So that's where we can start really perfecting it as we get a little bit more familiar with all those things. But that should be enough information right there to get you going and working. And one more thing, cheeks aren't used to being a sound producer yet. Remember how long it took for your breath support to become really solid. So do a little bit of work each day. They're going to get tired, but that continuous work each day is going to really strengthen those up and make it so those can be a good substitute for your diaphragm muscles while you're breathing in. Hope you enjoy your practice with that. Leave me a comment. Let me know how that's working for you. I'd love to hear about it. Thanks so much. We'll see you next week.